to our sixth Design Justice Network member story sharing session. Today we are hearing from Max Masure, who is here with us on the call. I'm going to introduce Max. Max uses they, them pronouns and is an ethical UX researcher, diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, author, and public speaker. They were named one of the most influential leaders in DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, in 2019 and 2020 by Hive Learning. They recently supported the United Nations in their efforts to improve engagement on their Sustainable Development Goals, trained Doctors Without Borders to better serve their employees and donors, trained a global hotel company to better serve their transgender and gender non-conforming customers, and they are currently advising the Service Design Network organization as a founding member of their Diversity, Education, and Inclusion Advisory Board. They believe in equity, human-centered design, nature-centered design, community-led initiatives, and the liberation of underserved communities. They regularly speak on trans inclusion, inner power, ethics, and transformative culture. And in the notes for today, I will share, there are a few ways that you can connect with Max, and Max will share those as well. And I forgot to introduce myself, so just before I transfer it over to Max, my name is Victoria. I work for the Design Justice Network as the International Network Coordinator. I'm based in Toronto, which is the territories of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Mississauga, and the Huron-Wendat. And I support all of the amazing Design Justice members and international coordinators in this network, and really happy to introduce you now to Max. I will stop sharing my screen and now pass over the mic to Max.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you. So I'm Max. I use they, them pronouns. I'm currently in the land of Mount St. Lenape, north of New York City, where I moved there 8 months ago. And I grew up in France, moved to the US almost 10 years ago. And I'm going to share a small presentation around how to support trans, gender non-conforming, and non-binary folks, so both people we work with and people we design for. I do that as a bigger workshop, so I wanted to make just a quick overview of that so we can discuss that into the breakout rooms later. As an introduction, I want to share, what can I share as an introduction? Maybe the most important things to know about me is that I am trans. I came out as a trans person just 5 years ago, something like that. So almost all my career in tech as a designer has been seen as a woman. And when I came out as a trans masculine person, I saw how everyone started to talk to me differently, to listen to me, to stop getting me off, to actually replying to my emails, stuff like that. Like, really was mind-blowing how the difference in gender is in the workplace and in the way we behave between each other. And that gave me the courage and motivation to do something around that. So I stopped working for tech and financial and all tech companies, and I focused into crafting workshops using service design thinking to help companies, especially tech companies, to be more inclusive and to build products that are going to be inclusive of trans and non-binary folks. So I started doing that like 4 years ago, and I also do UX research. So I kept that part of my design work in UX research with a very ethical lens, how to design for everyone and to focus on Black, people of color, people with disabilities, trans folks, queer folks at the core of our UX research. So I'm gonna start presenting that small presentation, and we can talk more after. Okay, you see that to my screen? Yes, okay. So supporting trans and gender non-conforming employees and customers. I'm going to start with a question that I would like to always ask is like, when you are part of a company, either you're managing people or you're working with a team, is like, what if someone is trans in your team? How do they feel now, or how will they feel? And this is the question we should ask ourselves often if we are creating a space that is safe and also brave, meaning that everyone can be their true self at work. Um, I wanted to share a few ideas of what could be done when you're within a company or a team. The first one is using pronouns, and that's something I really advocate strongly. I have an article on Medium that I can share later of why it matters to use pronouns and share even if you're not trans. I encourage to have inclusion trainings at offices and workplaces, and it could be inclusion around a lot of topics. I am specializing with trans inclusion. I do not feel myself as being the right person to do anti-racist work, racism work on my own. So I focus really on trans inclusion, but there's a lot of training that could be provided with other facilitators. And if you're not a trans person, you could become an ally. You could become someone who's actually advocating for the trans needs of someone in your team or in your company. And if you have power over hiring, I think this is rather the most power in the company. It's really to encourage more inclusive practices, from posting a job listing to the way people are interviewing, the way people are like um, incorporated to a team with more thoughtful ways. The other that are really a big question for us as designers, and I'm going to assume we are all designers in this room, is how the product we are building or the service going to support or exclude trans folks. Like, are we going to support or are we going to harm people? And we can think of like Uber rides not supporting trans and pronouns in the early days. I think it's getting better, but really, like, if someone is outed as a trans person in an Uber car, there's a risk that is still happening of like what is going to happen for that person if the driver is not really someone who is accepting of trans people. So the way we build a service or product has to be thought into what's going to happen for my users when those users are actually real human beings with their own identities. So a few things that we can already address as designers, engineer, is to have forms that are actually inclusive, which means we ask for pronouns to make sure we can reuse the pronouns somewhere else. And when we talk to the client, customer service, for example, they will know which pronouns to use. And the same for asking for the name. And you might need to have also the legal name. So if that person didn't change their legal IDs, you might need to know both. For example, if you work on a project for insurance, the insurance might have the legal name only, but you, as designing a service or a product, you want to address the customer with the name they use, which we only call the name. I saw a lot of preferred name, chosen name. We just call it name, and the other one is legal name. We can be really more paying more attention on the way we use visuals, illustrations, in the way we build our product and services to bring diversity in those as well. And inclusive research, which is a big topic, and we already covered that a few times here. And this is really bringing more representation of queer trans folks in people with disability, Black and people of color into the research on its own. So we're going to craft a better product. And when you think about more participants, diversity, plus more diversity in the people we hire, this is really the strongest way to be more inclusive, is to have people in the team and people that we are using for the research, for testing the product, that are also very diverse. And the last one, which is the most important, as a trans person myself, I cannot count the number of time customer service did name me, meaning that they use the name I don't use anymore, the name I was born with, or misgender me, meaning that they use the wrong pronouns for me. This is something that customer service folks just don't know, and there's a way to train them that has to come from the top. Like, yeah, it matters so much that we're going to train the customer service to respect trans and non-binary folks. Um, and this seems hard when something is really in place. I really believe that we're gonna see insurance companies accept name and legal name at some point. It will happen. It just we have to keep pushing and to have best practices as designers and encourage and find ways to like leverage some work that has been done to encourage institutions to make change. One example I wanted to show is the Citibank last year or 2 years ago finally launched the product True Name from MasterCard, which means now trans and non-binary folks can, if they have a different name from their ID, from their legal name, can actually have that name on their credit card, which is a big step. I had so many issues when my name was still my birth name, and when I was ordering a coffee at the cafe, people would like use that name on the credit card to call my name when my coffee was ready, which literally outed me as a trans person in the public space. I lived in Brooklyn at the time, which was not the worst place in the world to be seen as trans, but there's so many places that is dangerous. It's really dangerous. So Citibank made a big statement, make a big action that really now trans and non-binary folks can have the name they desire, the name they use on their credit card. So it can happen. It took a lot of time to make that happen, but it can. And before we move into breakout room, I wanted us to think about what could be the next small step that everyone can take. I have this article on Medium that I'll share after I'm done, where I explain why using pronouns matters. I want to encourage you to use your pronouns visibly on LinkedIn, on your email signature, on your Slack, on your every social media. Instagram now has a field for pronouns, which is new for like 2 months, I think. LinkedIn also. I don't think it's for everyone yet. I didn't see it on my own LinkedIn, but apparently it's coming. And if you have in your work some forms that you've been using, even just a sign-up form for your website or an app you've been working on, revise them. Look at how you handle pronouns. Do you ask for pronouns? And how you can separate asking for the name and asking for the legal name if you need it. If you don't need the legal name, don't ask for it, just put name. But those are like three interesting easy step that could be taken just today. And I want to finish by showing off a bit show off of my current work. I've been working in this workbook to debunk imposter syndrome, and I use my own story as coming out and having to go over a lot of feeling that I was not worth and I was not worthy, and I use those successes and failure in my life to come up with that workbook. And I use a lot of design thinking, service design tools to make that workbook very interactive. And I also do workshops around those, and I use Zoom. And for now, I've been doing that on Zoom. And the goal for this book is to be released in the fall, and I'm going to try to do that, but I still have a good chunk of writing to do, which is another topic of how it is hard to write a book. And that's it for me. You can find this on my website, and I'm excited to hear more about you all.
Thanks so much, Max. And might you be sharing the slides in the in our what is it called? The outline, or more
Yeah,
we'll just see them in the recording?
Yeah, I can share that. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So there'll be that as a reference for everybody, as well as the session outline. And so now we are going to jump into small breakout rooms. We're a small group today, so maybe like 3 people in a room probably. But what we have been doing for these sessions is using something called Google Jamboards. And we jump into breakout rooms and we look at and discuss what Max has shared or the member has shared. I'm going to paste into the chat right now a link to that Jamboard, so everybody can click on it if you can access that chat. And what comes up is, I will do a screen share. Once I remember how to do it. Where is it? Okay, here we go. All right, so this is what the Google Jamboard will look like. It just says DJ and story sharing with Max. So the idea is that you can come into the breakout rooms, do a little bit of introduction to yourselves, who you are, name and pronoun, discuss the story. So whether you read the story that Max shared that we put out into the newsletter and is on the Design Justice website, or everything that Max just discussed right now, read it or discuss the story and think about any kinds of questions or thoughts that have come up from you, maybe any new ideas that you've had. And you can use the Google Jamboard if you wish, and I'll show you quickly how. So for example, you could click the little sticky note here and you can add new idea. And when you click save, it shows up on your board like that. You can also use the text box and just start typing. This was such a cool story. I want to know more. And it'll all save there. And so what you'll do is when you go into your breakout room, the number that your breakout room is, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, you'll go to the Jamboard with that same number. So up here, you'll see 1 out of 6, and you can slide over. They all look exactly the same. So you'll just go to that Jamboard, and you can use it, or you can just talk to each other and share any thoughts. And at the end, there's a link here to the questions in the session outline, where you can type any questions that you want to ask Max after the session, or maybe you want to ask everybody as a group. But you could just copy and paste that into your browser, and it'll take you to the questions section, which I'll show you quickly. And oh, it looks like we already got some questions. So you can add your questions in here on the question and answer session. So I will stop sharing, and I will do quickly breakout rooms. You'll have 2 people probably, or 3 people in your room, and a little pop-up window will come up and we'll move you into those rooms, and you'll have about 10 minutes to hang out and chat with each other. So I am going to send you into those rooms now, and enjoy. Just as a quick access note, the closed captions doesn't carry over into the breakout rooms. So if you are using them and you want to stay, you can stay here in this main room, and we'll be able to talk in this room. Okay, so here we go, opening them up, and just click, I think, accept. Welcome back, everyone. I am guessing that you had some really great conversations in those rooms, since nobody popped back in really fast. So that's awesome. So now I'm just posting into the chat the questions section. So if you didn't add in any questions, you can add them in there. You can also just type some questions into the chat. But first call is, does anyone want to ask a question out loud or say something out loud? It is your turn to go now if you wish to ask anything out loud.
I had a question actually, and I did write it down. It's number 4. So for those of us who are also trans or non-binary designers, like, what's your advice for finding and making spaces that support us?
Yeah, that's a good question. I found a lot of like very good communities into Slack. So there's one it's called Out in Tech. I'm blanking, but finding communities online around being queer and trans. The Out in Tech is the best one because there's like a channel for trans and non-binary tech workers, a lot of designers and engineers. I would look into some local meetups as well. But yeah, you have to look for them. There's not a ton. There's a few. Yeah. I wish I could tell you more detail which ones. Sorry.
No, thank you. That helps actually. Because, with COVID and everything, it's just like completely in the dark. It's like I don't even know, starting from square one. So
Thanks, Jocelyn. Does anyone else have a question they want to ask out loud? That is totally fine. I will go to the questions that are in the document then. So the first one that I see, in your experience, how have you seen inclusion training make changes in a workplace? I'm asking because my past workplace would talk about this, but I felt it often had no effect.
We know it's hard to find a new job. It's hard to find a first job, and it's even harder when you're trans and trying to get a first job. So it doesn't. Yeah, inclusion training doesn't change the world at all. But it's one piece with another piece. So the way I work is also if the leadership team, if the CEO are on board, then there's going to be change impacted. Because if they are on board with pronouns, it's gonna trickle down into having pronouns on all the things, and then having gender neutral bathroom, and having more inclusive recruiting, and then really have leadership that is diverse and like white cisgender male stepping down from the leadership to have a queer person, a black person, a person with disability to make a different leadership mix. It starts somewhere. So yeah.
Thanks, Max. And folks, feel free to add like follow-up questions if you want to add any. Anyone want to say an out loud question, or I'll read the next one? Okay, I'm going to read the next one. So the next question, Max, is how did you first get involved in social justice issues or design justice? What was your first introduction?
So it's really because of me seeing my privilege. When I came out, I realized by being male presenting and white, I realized how I was now considered some more like worthy of whatever. I was seeing the same thing as before. I was doing the same design stuff as before, but suddenly he had more value just because he was coming from my mouth and my deeper voice and the way I presented. So I realized that, and it really also in life, like I remember the first time one of the first time after I came out and I was masculine presenting, I was walking the street, and a woman in front of me started to walk faster and grab her bag and walk faster. And this is why I realized, oh, I'm too close to that person, because I used to live as a woman, so I used to have this instinct to, at night, walk closer to another person, to not be the lonely woman in the street. So suddenly I was doing the same thing, but as being masculine presenting, and that person started to walk faster away from me. And this is where I realized, oh, I'm the creepy guy. I am the creepy guy too close to a woman. So I realized all that over the 6 months when I started testosterone and be more masculine presenting. And that made me like, okay, I had a lot of discomfort of like, I don't want to be the creepy guy. I don't want to have everyone listen to me and having more privilege. So this is where I started to think, okay, wait, I have a bigger audience just because I am masculine presenting. So I decided to use it to make an impact. So that really was how I got introduced into using more design justice, the principle as well is like, this is where I found everything. And the designer group for good was around that moment when I switched from working for tech companies, like very late at night on weekends, to the point that I burned out of having too much. Like, I was working like completely nonsense, trying to prove myself, and for product and services that were not really worth it. And that's when I burned out. I came out as trans because I finally stopped. My body stopped everything. My mind stopped everything for 3 months. I had to stop working, and this is where I had more space. I finally discovered who I was during the 3 months of not working, and I think this is. We were talking about that in the breakout room about intention and slowing down, and the way we work in the capitalist world. We have to always go fast, 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 and building production. When we start like slowing down, this is where we get into deeper layers and more intention. So that's how I feel, being more in like going to different depth. Yeah.
Thanks, Max. If anyone has questions, feel free to jump in. I'm going to move to the next one that I see. And I'm pasting it in the chat. So it says, history of Citibank. Do you know much about the push to make this happen, the change the gender pronouns on the credit card, or have any links to share where we could look up or research more? Would just love to know more.
So I know a lot about this. So to be clear, you don't change your gender pronoun on the credit card, but you put the name, so the name you use, and it doesn't have to be the name on your ID, on your identification card on your paper. So it's with a name. I was friend with someone who was working at a big agency, and he was talking like maybe 4 years ago. He started talking with me like, hey, can you imagine if we had our names on our credit cards? I think like, and I was like, yeah, this is exactly what happened this week for me. And this is where I decided to do those inclusion trainings. And this person who was also trans decided to like, you know what? I'm going to pitch that to MasterCard. And I was like, wow, that's never going to happen, but go for it. So, and he worked on that for like 2 years, had a lot of meetings, and it has to, yeah, I think it took 2 years to actually get into like, it's happening for MasterCard. And then MasterCard existing with that feature, Citibank jumped on it. And now that Citibank did it, I can see a lot of other banks going to want that feature. And that's how, like, for me, this is how capitalism can also weirdly bring impact, because now if it's a feature that customers are waiting for and expecting, then there will be more inclusion, which is weird. Like, I would have never thought that capitalism could help with inclusion, but this is one case. Like, the more people want, the more it grows. And I think from what I understood, the first week or so, first month of launching, they got like 6,000 people just already like changing their name. So I followed the whole thing from like 4 years ago to now. I don't have any link of the process of it, but if you look for MasterCard true name, I could try to look for now. They have a page, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna put that in the chat.
That's great.
And some of the people on the pictures I shared are friends of mine, so that's funny.
that's cool that you have a little bit of that background. So there's one more question that someone sent in chat private, so I pasted it in. It just says, can you tell us more about your upcoming book, Inspirations?
Yes. So this book for me is like I started to like 3 years ago. Was it 4 years ago? I was faced with a lot of imposter syndrome of like I cannot do anything. I'm not good enough, and that was part of me coming out as well. It was very linked with my career and the way I work and my own self of like finally opening my authentic self to the world. And 36 years old and not being my true self is a lot. Like almost all my life, like until I was 36, I was not living my true life. I was living a great life. A lot of people would have loved it, but it was not mine. So it took a lot of healing and a lot of like trying and facing a lot of uncomfortable and difficult stages of like maybe I can be my true self. Maybe I can wear like this type of clothes. Maybe I can have access to hormones to look and feel more masculine. Maybe. So all of that time, my personal life, I also I was faced with like people to work with, and um, it was hard for me to be confident, to really have the confidence to like show up at the meeting, show up with the clients. Everything was very bringing a lot of anxiety. So one day I was like, wait, I need to do something about that. So my brain was telling me all the time, I'm not good enough. That these clients say yes, but they actually don't want to work with me. Like really rewriting the truth, and just my brain was just giving me negative thoughts. So one day I took sticky notes and a whiteboard, and I started to write all the good stuff that happened this month. And I put them in the wall, and the goal was to be able to see it. So next time my brain would play tricks with me, I would look at the wall and say, that's not true. I did this and that this month, and this happened, and this client said that, and they want me to work on this. So I made that big wall of sticky notes, and I called it "Let's kick the ass of self doubt." So I was in my own apartment and trying to find ways to stop going crazy. Literally, I'm like, no, I can do stuff, and I ended up having like a big wall of a lot of sticky notes, and I was like, okay, this is real. This is data. This is true. And so my brain, you can shut up because this is proof. I'm doing a lot of things. I have a lot of success. So I cannot trust my brain. I cannot trust the thoughts. So I did that, and a lot of other exercises that I managed to do for my own self. And at some point, some friends were talking to me about how they also had those type of like negative thoughts. And I started sharing that tool with some friends, and they were like, oh my God, you saved my life, it's so good. And this is why I'm like, okay, you know what, maybe that should be something I do in a workshop. So I started to do on Zoom, and then the more I've done it, the more I'm like, okay, that could be a workbook with people that could do that, this exercise and other exercises. So the goal is for like initially for designers and engineer, people who are like exhausted and on burnout or almost burning out, and when we lose a bit that confidence that we could have had at some point in our lives, but we don't really know anymore. So yeah, so there's going to be 5 steps. At the end of the book, the goal is to have more like confidence and also clarity on who we should work with, and on which projects or which people we should work with. So bringing clarity, and it's hard to put. I don't know. It's simple and hard at the same time to put them into like a piece that's going to exist and people are going to use it. I have a lot of pressure and anxiety. And I have imposter syndrome, writing my book about imposter syndrome.
That's what I was just gonna ask about or mention, that I know from what you were describing and what you had shared earlier about imposter syndrome. I think the first time I heard that concept was within the network, within the Design Justice Network. Somebody shared it and I was like, what does that mean? And then I realized it was something that I experienced all the time and now had kind of a word to put to it. So I really love the book idea, and it sounds really cool. So you have to share it with us when it is officially launched in the members channels and that kind of thing.
Yes, yes. And I'm gonna self-publish also. If some people are like excited to know a bit more about that, I can also. I'm on the Slack, so I can answer questions, and yeah, and that gives me another goal to finish it really and release it in the fall, so you can all get it.
Amazing. Well, I'm just checking. I think we've made it through all the questions. I don't know if anyone has anything else they want to share or ask. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Yeah, I was wondering. Thanks for sharing the Out in Tech, Zach. As I mentioned, like in our breakout room, I have a designer who is joining our team, and I'm one of the most experienced designers in the team. So I'm handling a bit of the onboarding, and they use them. So I don't have any resources around like much like other design resources or the design community. I don't know any if they're connected with things, but in our package, I do put like design resources. So if there are others, I've just added that as like part of our design stack channel. People can join, but if there are other resources, I'd love to like include that in the onboarding package so that they can check it out if they haven't.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I know the Out in Tech, and let me look at my Slack for a sec. I don't know everything by heart. Yeah, they should join the design group for good as well, because I think it's like a very safe space too. And I got a lot of like discussion around ethics and stuff like that. That are really interesting. I think, yeah, I would recommend to look for Slack groups, conferences. This is how I got a lot of contacts. It's like conferences, a lot of like wider inclusion conferences, designers. There's one soon. They had the first one last year, and it's called "Where Are the Black Designers?" I don't know if some of you might have been on that. So they're doing it again this year. It's soon, in July maybe. I forgot. Yeah, I'm not the best with resources, so.
No, you shared a lot. That was your imposter syndrome again there.
Yes. Thank you for checking me out. Yeah.
There was another quick question in the chat. It said, are you working on your current book project with an editor?
Yeah, so I answer on the chat. Yes, I actually work with someone who is they call themselves a book doula, which is exactly what I need. Like, the content is in my head. I know how to do the exercise, the workshops, but it's really like giving birth. This is the same. So this person is perfect. They also use they them pronoun. They're queer, and they're like doing a lot of healing work. So we are super well aligned. So that's been a very good journey to have them by my side and to like making me feel okay to share my knowledge. I think there's a lot of like shame and guilt of like sharing things and making people use your own knowledge. I think if I was a cisgender white man, maybe I would not be that worried about throwing stuff out in the world. I think I've been conditioned as being assigned female at birth, of like being shy and like not be too loud. I don't know. There's a lot of that. I took around the topic of being loud. I took singing lessons for the past 5-6 weeks. This has been so difficult for me just to like let my voice out. And there's a lot of healing in the work I do.
Thank you so much, Max. This was amazing. It's a couple minutes until the hour, so I don't want to keep anyone too long, but we probably have time for one more question if anyone has a last minute burning thing they wanted to say. But I've shared in the chat, thank you to everyone. Thank you to Max for being here, for sharing your story, for everyone for participating. And if you want to provide any feedback, you can just send an email to the network address. I put it in the chat there for you. Any burning questions or thoughts before we close off?
Oh, the financial aspect of my book. I'm not doing it to make money. That's what I learned from people I really love in wrote book. Like, you're not making money with a book. Like, I feel like I have to put that out there. I'm not planning on making a lot of money. I use my own savings to pay for the editor, the book doula. And what I think gonna work is the imposter syndrome workshops I'm gonna do online. Then I will have a inclusive financial. So that means I will have some free spots for trans and non-binary folks, people of color, and then regular price. And if someone wants to pay more to do like a sliding scale, this is maybe where I might get a bit of income, but I also, my income is coming from different areas, which I think is the only way to make it work for me, at least. I'm gonna post the link to sign up for the workbook if you want to sign up.
There you go. I was just sharing. I was like, don't forget, you can connect with Max here, and here's the link to the website. So perfect timing. That's amazing. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Max, for sharing all of this wonderful knowledge with us, and everyone, obviously, for everything you've shared. And this was a really great session. So thank you everyone for being here, and wishing you all a good evening or morning or afternoon, depending on what time of day y'all are in. And yeah, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.